Hello everyone, welcome to Rainbow Infinity. Today I'll be reading Zubric's Castles Have Feelings Too, the second floor. If you like the reading, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Please enjoy. Here we go again. Twilight Sparkle, the princess of friendship. A friend to all, pretty as ever, and stuck with an unexplainable ability that ponies might think would be a novelty, but to her, it's a curse. Buildings were still very much opinionated, as certain as death and taxes. Her castle remained a stubborn entity in the sea of buildings known as Ponyville. The day had been long for Twilight, having spent several hours working through a fierce negotiation, the 12-page document reading as dry as the Saddle Arabian deserts. The events dragged on like an endless tug-of-war. To make it worse, the negotiation hadn't been with the mayor, nor had it been with a foreign diplomat. No, she had to do the most bizarre thing any pony could imagine, debating with her own house. In order to spare the reader the minutiae of tedium, the short version was that she'd finally wrangled her home back onto its foundations. However, despite Twilight's keen friendship abilities, the castle, in an action the princess could only guess was out of spite, had suggested, nay, demanded a few items in the deal, one of which she was staring down at from the balcony of the main lobby with a cringed expression. From the back stairwell and up to the front doors lay a carpet of the most hideous, unsightly, and garish design she'd had the misfortune of having to buy. A sickly green material, fuzzy as a centipede, covered the center strip, crashing together against an iridescent, pea-yellow trim on the edges. It would be quite a stretch to even think that the white tassels running along the sides stood any chance of saving it. To top it off, Twilight's perspective and slightly compulsive brain noticed straight away that the tassel's pattern wasn't evenly spaced. Twilight pressed her head against the railing with a soft thunk and let out a deep groan, praying to any deities that might exist that her castle was simply punishing her for her past actions. Or worse, it had no grasp on what good taste was. It was going to be a long few weeks. A loud yawn echoed down the crystalline hallways as Twilight sluggishly walked into her kitchen, eyes blinking slowly as she tried her hardest not to fall asleep on her hooves. The sweet siren's call of her bed was singing out for her embrace, but alas, she had spent the last several hours buried in the bowels known as bureaucracy, an unseen duty of being a princess, and often forgotten, usually for one's own sanity. Paperwork. Even if she wasn't head of the country, it was still an unfathomable amount to handle. Another yawn escaped her just as the pots and pans clinked against each other, and a light whoosh of air from the vents tickled her mane. She blinked slowly as she gazed upward at the ceiling. You want what now? Her brain was running slow, like thick taffy, so maybe she misheard. A few cupboard doors clacked softly in reply. A bedtime story, and a warm glass of milk and cookies? Are you kidding me? Twilight asked, raising an eyebrow. Must I remind you that you are, in fact, a house? A home which lacks a mouth to even eat? Creak! The sound echoed about the kitchen as one of the cupboard doors slid partly open before closing with a soft thunk. Twilight's tired eyes slipped open, blinking a few times in puzzlement. You dare me to do it? How bold, she yawned. Okay, fine. Her horn's glow lit up the kitchen's crystal walls as she prepared the snack. Perhaps she'd just eat it when the bedtime story was over. Surely, there was no conceivable way the castle could actually munch on it, right? Then again, her home had grown legs and walked off in a huff, so who knows what was possible. With the small tray of goodies held safely in her magic, Twilight headed steadily along to one of the side library rooms, hoping that it was far enough away from the bedrooms that she wouldn't wake any pony up when she began reading aloud. Settling onto the soft reading couch, Twilight set the tray onto the coffee table before scanning the shelves. A moment later, she floated a storybook off a nearby shelf, looking up at the ceiling. You'd better enjoy this, 'cause I'm exhausted." Like a parent trying to appease a foal who needed to go to bed, Twilight started reading the fairy tale, doing her best not to sound monotone. The occasional yawn interrupted the flow between paragraphs as the princess gazed longingly at the door. "Just one more," she said with a dragged-out, matter-of-fact tone that spoke of how much on the knife's edge she was. Each word seemed to drag on in her mind as she read toward the end of the fairy tale, the experience feeling vast as an ocean. Just as her literary boat reached the shore, her ears picked up the sound of chimes. She paused in her reading, just in time to witness the odd sight. Right before her eyes, the 2 cookies on the snack tray vanished chunk by chunk, as if nibbled away by an unseen mouth. Twilight's jaw dropped at a sight she thought she would only see if watching one of Discord's shenanigans. In just a few seconds, the only remnants left behind were a few trace crumbs. "Well, what?" Before she could question more about the situation, the milk in the glass dwindled slowly away, and she could swear she had heard a slurping noise as it lowered. Within mere seconds, the glass was empty, and a powerful burst of air from the air conditioning blew across her mane. She gasped, her face scrunching up in annoyance. "Cover your mouth," she blurted, only realizing the oddity of her words after the fact. The castle had just done the unthinkable, the house equivalent of a loud belch, leaving the princess flabbergasted. Twilight's eyes narrowed as she realized in bafflement that not only did her home have questionable tastes in decor, but now coarse table manners to boot. With a slam, she snapped the storybook closed and stood up, rubbing at her eyes. "I'm going to bed and pretend I didn't just see that." With a humph of finality, the princess exited the library, steadily heading straight to her room even as faint creaks and groans echoed behind her. Twilight's hoofsteps echoed in the vast map room as she paced in circles around the table. The ever-steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock clicks in sync with the pacing unicorn, muffling any subtle sounds the castle was making. Her face scrunched, her ear flicking as she listened to the room creak. "You want me to wear what?" Her hooves skidded to a stop near the door as the wind chimes sang. Twilight's eyebrow raised. You're joking, right?" The door squeaked in its frame subtly, and Twilight stomped her foot in response. "No, absolutely not. That would be a horrible color." She stomped her hoof, letting out an unladylike snort from her nose. "You know, I'm thinking you might be colorblind." She resumed her pacing as the castle continued its apparent rambles. If anybody had walked in on her, Twilight would appear to be talking to herself. Again. After one last lap, Twilight stumbled to a halt, her eye twitching as she peered up. "A what belt? Nope, nada." With a flash of magic, she flung the map room doors open, and Twilight scampered out in a huff, hurrying down the hallway with haste. Nope. The castle continued to creak and clack, even as Twilight's hooves thundered across the carpeted hallway. In her retreat, she nearly bowled over Spike and Starlight, both of whom watched her run by with confusion. Practically gliding her way down the main stairwell, Twilight flung the double doors open before bolting down the street. Nope, negative," she sputtered, her cheeks still flushed. Perhaps if she talked Applejack into letting her sample her hard cider, she might forget the castle's ludicrous suggestions. She didn't care if it tried to walk off again. It wasn't worth it. Starlight blinked slowly as Twilight zipped past her without a word. She glanced over at Spike with a shrug. "What do you think that was about?" Spike shrugged in response, adjusting the tray of snacks in his grip. "Maybe she's twilighting again? I'll ask her later." As the two moved along to the library, neither of them noticed one of the many snacks disappearing one bite at a time, till nothing remained but crumbs. Meanwhile, in Canterlot Castle, Celestia and Luna sat on their thrones, enjoying a quiet coffee break. They had cleared the room except for the guards on either side of the dais, who remained as stoic as ever. As Celestia took a soft sip of her black brew, she looked at her sister, noticing her upward gaze. Following her eyes, She peered toward the golden chandelier, which occasionally swayed in an unseen breeze. Despite her vast knowledge of magic, the random motion left her puzzled. "So, is something on your mind, sister?" Luna sipped at her cup, blinking slowly as she watched the chandelier sway like a clock. "Every third swing is slower," she muttered. There was a pregnant pause before Luna spoke again. "It's like it is trying to say something." Celestia tilted her head, confused by the reply. "Maybe I should have let you sleep today instead of making you stay up." It took her mind a few seconds to register the other half of what Luna had just said. Say something? Reminds me of Twilight's letters about talking buildings. Luna gave her sister a returned head tilt, taking another long sip from her brew. Well, Twilight's castle went for a walk, so perhaps her claims aren't so out there after all. For a few moments, the two sisters watched the swaying and glanced at each other in thought. After some time, Celestia broke the silence as she replied, "What do you think our old castle had to say?" Luna chuckled, lightening the mood as she smiled. "I can think of one, sister." "Ouch!" Luna tapped her horn, and the two laughed together. Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Until next time, stay tuned.